It's the phrase that pays. Kank. I liked it so much last time. I'm going to do it again. Though the weather outside is frightful, your three expert cartoonists pitch me us. I must be dreaming are so delightful. Guys, welcome back to Pencil to Pencil. We did it again, you guys. We've made it. I'm very happy to see your faces again. And I know you're happy to see these smiling angelic countenances. You'd love it. Who else could you take this kind of information from if not your buddies with Matinee Idol Good Looks and Lantern Jaws? Yeah, look at that, Mike. What a jaw on that guy.
Good evening.
Good evening. Guys, let's do some introductions for Pencil to Pencil. Guys, I'm your first host. My name is Jamar Nicholas. I wear many hats besides this one. I am the second vice president of the National Cartoon Society. The Rubens Division Award submissions are closed. You had your chance. Do not want to hear anybody's mouth later when they're like, bleh, bleh. Yeah, you should have submitted. That's all I have to say. I hear it every year. Did you submit?
Nope.
Nope. Well, okay then.
I never submit.
What did Granny say? You get what you get, and you don't get upset. So you gotta play to win. Besides all that, I am also the chapter chair of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have a new book coming out in November 2026, part of my Leon Extraordinary series. Leon and the Big, Big Problem will be out November 3rd, 2026. Steve Conley, what should they do?
They should, if they are so inclined, and even if they're not inclined, they should cop it. And why don't they?
Why don't you? What's wrong with you?
Why don't you?
Guys, I would be remiss. I would be in remission if I did not introduce my co-host, cohort, and co-conquistador. He is the reigning.
Wait a minute. I thought he was the melodic.
Oh, you want to hear that? All right, I'll remix it. Hold on, I'm gonna run it back.
I thought he was the melodic tinkler.
I haven't done that in a while. Guys, you may not like this man when he's angry. You may see him walking up the side of the internet superhighway with the melodic tinkle at his back. He is your friend and mine. By God, it's Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up,
Gentlemen?
Steve Conley? Yes.
Gentlemen, it's so good to see you. I just want to correct one thing. You just may not like me. You don't need a reason. You just
really may not like you, right?
I'm not sure if I like me. So yeah, that's fine. But you would like my comic called The Middle Age. My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw your 23rd favorite webcomic called The Middle Age, which is available at Webtoons, Tapas, Go Comics, and my own website at steveconley.com. And I make the TTRPG stuff for your Dungeons and your Dragons. The latest one, Stabracadabra, is in the pre-order shops open now, and the next one is going to crowdfund in February as part of Backer Kit's Zinetopia. So that one's called Wildest Shape, and you can check it out.
Wait, so what is that? Is that going to be your own zine?
Yeah, the D&D started as zines back in the day. The original Dungeons and Dragons books, they were basically photocopied by or mimeographed or they were duplicated back in the 70s. They were made by nerds in basements, so very relatable to
I know some of them.
And so every February in the RPG space, in the tabletop role-playing game space, Kickstarter and Backer Kit and other crowdfunding platforms kind of celebrate creating zines, creating these TTRPG books, what we would have called ash cans in the self-publishing comics world. But enough about me.
Hold on. Just in case people are confused what Conley 316 means, Conley 316 says, back my crowdfunding campaign. That's what Conley 316 means.
That's what it means.
Continue.
Sure. But I would be remiss. I would be reminiscing if I didn't introduce the Tower of Power, the Man Hour Too Sweet to Be Sour, the maestro of mark making, Darkhawk's daddy. He drew your childhood and 2 daily comic strips. 4 calling birds, that sort of thing. Mr. Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone. I am your childhood.
Oh, that's deep. I like that. Just go right to it.
That's right. I see I got my Mr. Rogers sweater on. You know, I come in and I put on my soft canvas shoes and put on my sweater and I sit down and draw your childhood.
Mike Manley, did you hear? I just heard this factoid that Fred Rogers wore those cardigans because his mother or his grandmother knitted all of them.
That sounds like an urban legend.
Yeah, all right, we'll have to go to the tape. But that was very interesting to hear.
Yeah, huh? It would be better if Captain Kangaroo knitted him for him.
You got me with that one.
You know, but in fact, on my socials this week, I posted some more blasts from the past, some more coloring and activity book stuff. I have to dig more out because I did quite a bit of it. I think one of the last ones I did was a Hot Wheels activity. It was a Hot Wheels activity and sticker book. So like there were coloring book pages, and then they had the stickers that you could, you know, pull out and then stick on.
Did you get to draw the orange Hot Wheel track that we used to get?
No,
we used to get beat with that when we were kids in the 70s.
Yeah, it was. We used to get that, and well, I also remember Johnny Lightning. Johnny Lightning was the other, like I guess, poor man's
Hot Wheels. Right?
Hot Wheels, yeah.
Yeah.
The worst thing is you had the two pieces of orange track, and then you had that little plastic joiner.
Yeah, the connector, right?
Now you put that joiner in, you could whip the shit out of somebody with that plastic joiner in there. You know, that gave a little heft to the edge of the plastic.
It cuts through the wind like that.
That's right. Yeah.
A little life hack for anyone tuning in from 1974.
Exactly. You know, it's like you're losing. Stuff a couple of those little pink joiners in there, and you can really go to town.
I thought I would learn how to use a boomerang with those. I thought for sure that was going to teach me. Those were my batarangs as a kid.
Hey, there's you know what? Before we get to Don, I wanted to do a little in memoriam. But our buddy Tristan has a question for you, Mike. Question for Darkhawk's daddy. Did you see the Darkhawk as someone who would one day pass on the persona a la the Phantom or Batman? How did you see that character evolving?
Well, actually, the Darkhawk was a battle suit, right? So it's not like you're passing on anyone could use that suit, right? So we sort of revealed that in the 25th issue. There was a spaceship, and basically it was sort of like to take off on Captain Marvel. The both Captain Marvels, Marvel, the Marvel Captain, and Shazam. So when Billy Batson switches, he goes to some other place and he becomes Captain Marvel. And when Rick Jones would switch with Bell, he would go into the negative zone, and then Marvel would come out. So it was the same thing when Chris Powell would switch and become Darkhawk. It was basically his consciousness was transferred into that suit, but his consciousness was his physical body was on that spaceship. So it was sort of like wormhole conscious thing. So anyone could actually wear that suit. And if I had continued on the book, my idea would be that there were several different types of battle suits that were like Darkhawk. And you saw a little bit of that, but I left with 25. But if I were to do it, that's what it was. So there was that whole thing about like why you couldn't see his face and all that, because he didn't have a face. He's an android body. That was just a convention that Danny came up with.
Shout out to my man Danny Fingeroff. you guys made a great team, and every time you guys did stuff together, it was always fantastic.
Yeah, Danny was always fun to work with. Yeah, and he was he was an editor too at the time, so that was fun.
So we have a bit of speaking of your childhood, Steve. You want to give us a little sad
Well,
note?
I was going to ask Mike about his interactions with Sal Buscema, Buscema? I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Buscema. You got it. Yeah.
If you crossed paths with him, I understand he passed away this week, and see a lot of tributes online for him. And I want to know, Mike, your take on the man.
Well, I always liked Sal's stuff. I never met him, and I regret to say that I had an opportunity to meet John, which was the last San Diego he was at. But his table was mobbed, and I had my booth, and I was going to go back. But then when I went back, he wasn't there. It's like, you know how San Diego is. Like, if you see somebody, you got to see him right then, because if you don't see him right then, you will never see them again. But I did post a little bit on my Facebook about Sal, and one of the first Marvel comics that I remember buying, I've talked about this before. For some reason, the only way I could get Marvels where I lived in Detroit, the little store down the street, you got them with the covers ripped off. But then my dad got a part-time job, and across the street, and I would go help him. He would clean a bank at night. And across the street was a drugstore. And in that drugstore, there was a spinner rack that had all these new Marvel comics. So that was like super exciting. And I remember buying one of the first issues of The Defenders, which was by Sal. And so, no, I never met him. I always liked his work. I think he really was sort of like, he and Gil Kane were really sort of like Marvel in the 70s. They really, Gene Colan, he really was a great cartoonist. He drew stories that were really easy for anyone to read. He was a really good storyteller. And I think in a way, he kept reinventing himself in a way that John, his brother, who drew better than him. But I think that Sal had an intellectual capacity to his work that allowed him to continue to sort of evolve his style, evolve his storytelling in a way that John didn't. And and John Buscema is like, after Jack Kirby, he's probably my favorite comic book artist. But I think Sal had an intellectual way of approaching his work, which is really important as you get older, because, we always talk about old man drawing. I don't really think Sal got that. A lot of old timers sort of get that point where they peak and then they start to go down. And he was a workhorse.
Right.
No, there will never be anybody like that again. The whole business is so different. There will never be someone who could draw 2 books a month.
Right.
Word up. All right. Well, thank you for that, Steve and Mike. And he will be missed and has an indelible mark on the industry in the world as it is. Guys, I would be remiss if I did not kind of blow the bugle for our guest tonight. we had a really great time last week. I say this all the time. Where's the time go? Man, I swear, like we just ended the last stream, and here we are again. I think we kind of had a snowstorm in between that here on the East Coast, so I've been dealing with ice baby, like that ice, like outside my house. all for like 5 days straight. My back really hurts, but I'm all charged up for tonight. Don Simpson is back. Woo! Woo! All right, you guys. I saw in the chat some people were like, "Oh man, I missed it last week, but I'm here now." Good on you. And we're going to have a great chat, guys. We're going to go to 9:30 EST. So I would ask you to start loading up questions now in the chat so we can stack them and have them ready for Don. All right, sounds good? Great. Guys, welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, our good buddy Don Simpson. Ping! You've been rendered, Don Simpson.
I am remiss. I'm just plain remiss. And it's an interesting question. What kind of ice is worse? But let's not get into that.
Word up.
I did have a note. Conquistador was the title of the first compact cassette that I ever bought in 1976.
Wow.
Maynard Ferguson with Bob James and George Benson doing "Gonna Fly Now," kind of a disco jazz. It was that popular jazz era.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Superman, Herb, what's his name?
Herb
Herbie
Alpert?
Man or whatever,
Oh,
that
Herb
era.
Alpert. Yeah.
You know, all that stuff. But and Sal Buscema, his Avengers. I remember his Zodiac. Speaking of coverless comics, it was probably coverless. But yeah, it's the end of an era. My goodness. Because Ron Friends here in town, still was collaborating with Sal and Tom DeFalco and so forth on his three-cornered hat guy.
Oh, right, yeah.
Whatever that was, Captain Patriot or whatever.
You said Spirit of 76. Who was that?
So what do you want to talk about? This is people are looking askance at this, like 2 weeks in a row with this tired old guy, this old man drawing and everything. It's like, man, old man drawing hit me about 1987. So I've been like on a downhill slide, and here I am 2 weeks in a row on pencil to pencil. So
well, not everybody gets 2 weeks, Don Simpson. So
actually, I'm auditioning to replace one of you. I'm not at liberty to talk, but there have been some complaints. The HR department at Pencil to Pencil has contacted me, and this is kind of a backdoor pilot, kind of a tryout. So
that's right. You gotta
watch yourselves.
Gotta make good tonight. It all hinges on tonight. This is your callback. I love it. Well, I feel
enough said.
I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface, and I feel like we kind of just ran out of road, and we were having such a great time having that chat last week. We had to just keep going.
And so, I'm wearing Dark Hawk underoos. So I have the cosmic consciousness. That was the last note. All right.
So I'm gonna take the chat off of the screen. The chat is still lively, and now we get to see all of Mike's nice gingham shirt. So Mike, why don't you lead us off with Don, and I will monitor the chat.
Okay. Well, one of the things we didn't get to talk about last week, which I thought was also a really interesting aspect to your career, was that you went back to school to get your PhD, and then you were also teaching. So I thought that was an interesting chapter, because some cartoonists teach, but I would say the bulk of cartoonists probably don't teach. So
well, I had started teaching workshops in the early 90s because of the image thing. I thought it'd be fun to. I was taking a couple classes. I took like a theater skills class at the community college, which was kind of a non-credit workshop, and I took French, and I just wanted to get out of the house because I was sitting at the drawing board. But one day I decided to pitch them on a cartooning workshop, and this was right when Savage Dragon, Megaton, all that stuff. And so I got an influx of people, good crowd. And, everybody from like 15 to 50 and 80 and so forth. And people are asking me, well, do you know Todd McFarlane, stuff like that. But that was the first teaching experience. And but then we were talking about the implosion, the exclusives of the mid 90s, and which is kind of the tail end of that image phenomenon. Everybody was signing up exclusive, Marvel bought Heroes World. DC went exclusive with Diamond, and then all these distributors started going out. Friendly Franks and Glenwood and so forth. And just when I got into like self-publishing, and I got this big pile of money from these image books, and I bought my Quadra 800, my Macintosh Quadra 800, which Larry Marder once made the observation that maybe that was the most significant thing, was that I entered the digital world. And because you're otherwise you talk about old man drawing. I mean, I knew artists that never adapted. There were people in there's one artist in Multimensions, and I just got these today. These are the hardcovers. Finally got my shipment of hardcovers from Multimensions. But we had one of the contributors, and I won't mention the name, but he is like a technophobe. And the writer was sending, this is a fellow who won't even go to Staples to get scans. He has to mail the original art to the writers, which is like taking a chance. No photocopies or no archival documentation. But there were a lot of guys like that in the 90s who just did not adapt to, and there's still groups on Facebook. Everybody's bitching about the quality of art supplies. There's a bunch of people, Walt Simonson and so forth. Walt gave me some pens, brush pens made in Japan recently. I've gotten to know Walt from recent shows. I'd met him years ago, but anyway, he was kind enough to give me some pens. But at least somebody's making some synthetic tools. But there's a group on Facebook, and they're all bitching about quality of paper and the Bristol board and the ink. And
it's true. I would be in that group.
And there's part of it is these places got bought and sold and taken over and cheapened and so forth, but also there's only those 6 guys on Facebook that still use this stuff. And when you have a dwindling market like that, there's no profit margin. I mean, they used to sell 80 million square feet of Bristol board back in the 80s. When I got out of high school, there was still a commercial art industry.
Yeah.
There were drawing boards, millions, there were hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs, people with T-squares and triangles and pens and pencils. They weren't all Sal Buscema or, but they were using all those materials. And so we benefited from this scale and quality art supplies and quality brushes and all that stuff. And then it just became, fewer and fewer people. This is my drawing board. The legs of this drawing board are from the 70s. This is a smaller tabletop. I used to have a much bigger tabletop. But I mean, you used to walk into places where you could punch a clock and sit at one of these drawing boards for 40 hours a week, plus all the overtime you could want. Now there's only drawing boards at in homes, in people who work at home. I finally visited Marvel Comics in 2002, right after 9/11, and there was one drawing board and lots of Macintosh workstations. But there was one guy, Scott Eaton. Scott Eaton did retouching of stuff, and he needed a drawing board. And he was also looking at the submissions, and the submissions were terrible, by the way. Just show me the slush pile.
Just a little.
You think Marvel's getting the cream of the crop, but no, they were terrible. But yeah, it's a dying breed.
Hey Don.
Except in Japan.
Oh yeah, Japan is different. I want to throw this little thing in here real quick. Is it Adam Savage from the MythBusters guys? He has like a little video show where he's in his workshop
Yeah.
talking about stuff. He had a 30-minute screed about how they changed the Papermate Sharpwriter.
Oh yeah.
And the Papermate Sharpwriter was his favorite. It's my favorite pencil, like out of the whole drawing world. And they silently changed something so slight about it, but threw the whole thing off. And he bought tons of these. Thought maybe he just got some misfires, but they just they changed the formula and threw it all off, threw it all away. So
is the graphite waxy? Is it that kind of thing, or
yeah, or it's stiffer, or it's just something so minute. Only somebody like us would know something's wrong.
Well, can you say what that Walt Simonson recommended pen is?
Yeah, I don't have one nearby. It's on my Facebook page. If you, I'll find out what it is.
Was it like
or
something?
Japan, of course, there's still a tradition of calligraphy and so forth. But anyway, yeah, it's it's but the significant thing was, and we were talking about teaching, because so I got a computer and I got a foot into the 21st century, but at the same time the market went kaput, and I was teaching these non-credit workshops, and it took a delay. I was still cartooning, but I eventually decided to just go back to school, and I signed up at community college. I was working at Borders, in the early 2000s. I signed up at Borders. I was working at Borders in 2001, the summer of 2001. I think it was and I believe it was because Harry Potter #4 was coming out. And because I was hired a week before, I remember them showing me the store. Here's the local section. Here's the Bibles. Here's philosophy and so forth. And here's this thing called Harry Potter, and it was in the kids section, and then it was in the middle of the store, and it was behind the counter. You got to know what that is. People are going to ask for Harry Potter. And then 3 days later, the whole store was covered with the Goblet of Fire. And I didn't read a paragraph of that until much later, 2015. But because I was going in another direction, I was reading philosophy and other stuff. But one day I'm sitting there looking through the Idiot's Guides and the Shams algebra guides, and I'm thinking I should go back. I'm only making $7 an hour at Borders, selling books when I got a lanyard and a name tag and stuff. And this is I'm a has-been cartoonist, and I think to myself, well, I should go to sign up for classes, and I'll read a Idiot's Guide or a Shams or a used book or something, and then when I take the class, I'll be able to ace it, the algebra or whatever it is, earth science, and then I went to community college. I blew through 60 credits. I transferred to the University of Pittsburgh, and then I majored in art and architectural history, and I just kept going until I was committed to go until they told me to stop. I was waiting for somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say, okay, you're out, get out of here. But it never happened. And I proceeded to grad school, and 2013, I got my PhD. In the meantime, I had started, I'd been doing Megaton Man online. I did the Megaton Man weekly serial in the late 90s after the print thing expired. And I even started a graphic novel where there's a terrorist attack and so forth. In 2002, I had started a graphic novel, and I was going to basically incorporate 9/11 into the storyline of Megaton Man. And I showed this to a few people that I still kept in touch with in comics, and the verdict was that it was too soon, like too soon. So I put that aside and I went back to school for 10 years and then I picked it up and I'm still coloring that now. And I sent you the PDF for that, but that's one of those long delayed projects. I forget what the original question was, but that was my spiel.
About, I mean, basically you decided to go back to school and then you also, were you teaching while you were in school?
In grad school, then after you get your master's, which is 2 years, so this would have been 2009, then they start making you a teacher's assistant. And so the professors teaching in an auditorium have 150 students or more, and then you're one of the people, the thing called recitation. So there would be these breakout groups. A couple days a week, you'd have you'd have different sections. You'd have 20 students at a time, like three or four classes. So then you were a teaching assistant, and you would go over the professor would lecture, and then you would interact with the students on Fridays and give homework and grade and stuff like that. And then eventually you would teach a class. So that's where I got my training wheels. And then I was teaching art history. I ended up being an adjunct in mostly I did teach art history at a few places, and I taught studio art even, which I am not a studio art degreed person at all. What I associate most with studio art and non-credit workshops, by the way, is usually there's like a studio where there's like a dirty sink full of brushes that nobody's washed and finger paint all over everything, and just really awful. So I'm not a studio artist per se in my education, but I did a lot of reading and writing and research, and it was all about paintings and art and buildings and statues and stuff and contemporary art. But it could have been about anything, and really the benefit of going back to school was doing an enormous amount of reading and writing and learning to punctuate properly, because us artists, we're not footnotes and how do you hyphenate and all that stuff. So it was a really good experience and good training, and I came out of that feeling very confident with my writing skills. And so I made this kind of conversion from being a dumb visual artist with thumbnails and improvising and inspiration, going to museums and looking at paintings and stuff. I became this full script person, which is this other, like, where did that come from? But now I have to write a full script. I still revert back, and occasionally I'll just improvise, and I'll start with a drawing, and I'll start with some crazy idea, and what happens next kind of thing. But now I'm much more comfortable with writing out all kinds of instructions for myself that then I sit down and draw. And then because I'm hand lettering it, I refuse to letter half of it, so that helps winnow it out. But it was a good experience. It was a great experience, and you only live once, so I figured. I was married to a PhD in chemistry for 10 years, so I think that was an influence. And she was very. So I'm working at Borders, and she was going for her master's in business, and so it just seemed like a good opportunity. The writing was on the wall, and I went in that direction.
Don, I was going to ask you about that. I know a lot of creatives like hate school, right? It's kind of like, I want to sit down at this desk and draw my worlds, and the last thing they'd want to do is sit in a class or have to do homework or like read tests.
Well, that's the irony, because in elementary school, I mean, I wasn't stupid and I wasn't illiterate. I was actually a pretty good speller, but I was always drawing on the back of my homework. It was like they would give you a ditto sheet, purple printed ditto sheet, and like if it was blank on the other side, I would turn it over. I'd be drawing Spider-Man, doing the webbing and getting the webbing all. That I was constantly drawing instead of, but I could retain. I could, um, it wasn't like I flunked anything,
Right.
but I was not a studious student. That's for sure. And after high school, I did not have much of an academic future. I went to art school, and then I dropped out of art school after a year and so forth.
That's
Yeah.
funny because I did the same thing. You went to the Center for Creative Studies in Detroit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to go to Art Center, which I always say to young people, like when I came out in high school, like there's a whole industrial complex now to get you from high school into college that really didn't exist when I was in high school, especially for like going to art school or anything like that. So I went to Washtenaw for a semester and I dropped out, and I didn't go back to school till I was 45. So, it's sort of interesting because we sort of have some parallels in that way.
Well, when you're, it wasn't until, I'm actually in this business, and I'm writing and drawing, and I'm realizing, gee, I wish I'd taken advanced placement English, so I'd read Homer, and I knew something about story, the classics, because, or Shakespeare, and all the various plot lines and so forth. I wish I had done that. I wish I had read Mark Twain and Huckleberry Finn and so on. And so it's not until you're out there and you're thinking, oh, I should have taken advanced placement English, and I should have read Nicholas Nickleby and all this stuff, and I should have then I would have that. So it's like if you had $50 and you started a savings account in 1965, you'd have $350,000 today or something like that. It was like, boy, if I'd only taken some high school classes and really exerted myself. But I was just taking like music and choir and music theory, and I took, any like whatever minimum. I couldn't wait to get out of there. But I also found, at the same time, I also found, you're talking about Selby Summit and his intellectual heft. I got bored at art school. I get bored with artists. In fact, you guys are like, when is this over? I was just restless. I was always wanted a little deeper thinking, a little more thoughtfulness and so forth. So I was always looking for that. But like I was just hitting my head against the wall. It was right there in front of me. I could have taken a different attitude about school and so forth, but I didn't. So, and then it was like only later that I realized, and there's this, straight from high school into college is not for everybody.
No.
No.
It's very rare, in fact. I mean, it's really, that's the way it's set up. Like, you're a traditional student, you go straight, you're fired out of a cannon. But I've seen this in the students that I've taught, that the non-traditional students, the people that have been out there in the world and they've gotten a little bit of life experience, and they have a little, they've hit some road bumps, or just they've just had some time to think, and then they come back to school, and then they're not fucking around when they come back to school.
Right.
They are serious. They want to make it count, and there's a real big difference. I would much rather have a student in their late 20s, 30s, somebody who's there because, like, this is what I want to do, rather than, I started teaching, I mentioned those non-credit workshops, and those were non-credit. You're not getting a grade. So I was getting people from 15 to 80.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be there because they wanted to do syndicated cartoons or New Yorker cartoons, or they wanted to do Batman or something. And so they were enthusiastic. Then I started teaching credit courses, and people are looking up at the ceiling. And what is this fat guy doing taking attendance? Don Simpson. Oh, living legend Don Simpson. I hear this all the time now. I'm like, oh, you're a living legend. You were in Image year 1. Ooh. And like, ooh, and it's like, no. You go into a classroom and I'm telling you, I made no secret about Anton Drek or anything. They could have Googled it. They didn't care. It's like that Monty Python, sketch where John Cleese comes in and makes love to his wife, and the kids are looking out the window and they're bored and and that's because they were all straight out of high school, going through the motions, and now they're in sophomore year, and couldn't wait to get through their requirements. So, yeah, I would much rather have a non-traditional, an older person who's been around the block, and they, time the clock is ticking, and they're paying for it, and they're serious.
Don, I had a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I feel like I keep
No,
cutting you
go
off.
ahead.
Don, I had a question about that because almost all of us here have teaching experience, and when you've had those, I kind of call them gym pop art classes, where there's like an 8th grader and there's like a 70-year-old person in the same room. How did you kind of get through that course? Like, were you just kind of trying to narrow in on everybody to just kind of get them going, and then you circle the room, or did you give them some sort of grand
Well,
assignment? How did you do that?
Well, they say that when you teach, you really learn. You really learn the thing even deeper, because you're really thinking about it. And I went in there, and we're talking the Community College of Allegheny County, and I taught a non-credit workshop in cartooning. And I was just in there. People are coming in because oh, you're in, Image. This is all very fresh. So we had a full house and 20 students at least, and but I was sitting there. Okay, well, what do you want to know? And crickets. Nobody knew what to ask. Do you want to start? So I eventually realized, oh, I need a syllabus. I need to present some material. I need to talk about penciling, inking. We'll start with stick figures and poses and how do you tell a story, and then we'll get into inking and lettering, and I'll show some tools. And then I developed a plan, a syllabus and a plan, and I had a list of books. Go get How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and Dynamic Anatomy, and Jack Ham's animal drawings and stuff like that. So then it became more organized, and I ran this workshop several times, 6 or 8 week workshop. And by the time I was teaching credit courses, then of course it's all about the syllabus, and here's what you're going to be tested on, and here's what you got to know, and et cetera, et cetera. So you have a whole contract basically and a roadmap. So that's how I evolved as a teacher.
Yeah.
And I got reasonably good at it, I think. But as far as tuning into students, and if they're looking for that, whatever it is, whatever the subject is, all you can do is kind of help them take the next step. And so you have to kind of, sorry, I'm coughing. You have to kind of find out where they're at, what's their next step, kind of help them along, show them, and it's going to be different for everybody. People are ready to move into inking. They're ready to do lettering. They're ready to think about page design, whatever it is. But you can't expect everybody to go from 0 to 60 in 6 weeks.
Oh,
so some people are I was getting a lot of accountants and lawyers, people that had, wanted to do what Mike is doing. They wanted to do syndicated comics, from when they were a kid, but then they had a family, and then they had a career and so forth. And so then this was their chance to do their thing. And those were very interesting. I had some like military veterans who were drawing upon their life stories and doing things, and people that wanted to do talking horse comic strips, whatever it was. You just have to meet people where they're at. And not everybody wants to do Steranko or
Right. Exactly.
the cutting edge avant-garde bande dessinée sequential art. They just want to how to how do you put down an outline.
Yeah, I had an air traffic controller, and I had a couple older guys in one of the last. I taught a Saturday morning class, which was like that. So you had like kids that were like 12, and then you had people that were, and you figure like an air traffic controller, that's a high stress job, right? So it was interesting because you're right. You have to sort of figure out. What I learned is,
and those guys are up there in the control tower. They're doodling Batman. They're all like, "Oh, what was that? A near miss? Sorry about that."
What I learned. You're right. Is that you're sort of like a preacher. You relearn the Bible because you're teaching it to everybody else, right? So you're preaching, and everybody's at such a completely different level. So you have to think about your process to explain it to people who don't understand what the process is. Mm-hmm. And what I learned was and I talked about it on here before, was the little duck. So in the beginning, I was a little bit too guilty of trying to give the little duck a whole loaf of bread. You're going to fucking eat this loaf of bread. You're going to love it. It's going to be nutritious. You're going to learn everything. What? The little duck's dead. What the fuck? Right? So what I learned is that every week I'm going to give the little duck one fucking little piece, right? The next week, the duck comes up. You give the duck another piece. If you give the duck 2 pieces, he will lose both pieces because he will try to put both pieces in his mouth, and he will invariably drop the piece. So I had to pace myself, and every class was different because you had some classes where you had people who really kind of advanced, like a college class, but then you'd have a class where there's a lot of whiners in the class, and they can't really dig in. And I think because I taught sometimes at the same time, I taught the high school class, which was open to any kid in the city of Philadelphia could come and take this class for free. But then I was also teaching college level courses. What I realized, probably especially for the younger people, the most important thing was just to give them information, because they don't have the information. They have the idea that this is what they want to do, but they don't have the information. So a lot of it was just saying, oh, you want to be a cartoonist, or you want to be a character designer, or you want to draw comics? Oh, what kind of comics do you like? I'd always start by like trying to figure out what did the student like. And then I had a couple different drawing tests that I would give, which introduced them to some concepts of design, but also let me see where everybody's skill set was, because that's the other big thing. It's like the people who draw well are naturally going to do better because they're not struggling just to like make the eyes even, right? So, but yeah, I learned.
Did you teach? Let me ask you, Mike, did you teach during COVID?
I stopped teaching during COVID.
Anybody teach that far into?
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's
my point.
Yeah, there was a point where we're all virtual, and
now, what were you teaching, Jamar?
Well, I was teaching illustration at the. I have an administrative background. Like I've always worked at universities back when I was still working a day job, and I also had work study students, so everybody was virtual. So I was teaching, and then I was also trying to manage all these work study students virtually, which was a nightmare. So one of my favorite things to do, and this is like before people had Zoom rules, you know how we kind of know how to do that now, but that thing was so new then. I
So
had to
that's the one benefit is I know how to do this
right
now because of all that
that
teaching experience.
I had to say things like when you're on Zoom, besides keeping your camera on, can you be vertical? Like there were kids who were in their dorm rooms in the bed with the camera on. Like you gotta
You got
not
to sit up at the
you
table.
gotta
Yeah.
you gotta sit up when you're in class. Who
Oh
would have
man.
thunk it? So yes, Todd, to answer your question.
Yeah, I was coming to the end of a decade when oh yeah, Joe
Yeah.
Ely Corrales taught during COVID. Yep, all virtual. Yeah, we all had to learn how to do that. Joe's in multi-mentions. I'll tell you something about this though. I actually applied lessons from that I learned from teaching in this because I literally have 50 collaborators here,
Wow.
50 contributors, and I realized it was a lot like these group working groups in school. I was teaching a business communication class, and uh, people were learning how to do memos and proofread and that kind of thing. And there was a point in the class where the general syllabus that was given to me was called for a group project. And I thought, well, like group projects, there's always somebody that loafs and lags behind, and the other people have to pick up the slack and all that stuff. And I thought, well, I wasn't going to do that. I was just going to have people do individual research projects. But my students wanted to do group projects, and so okay, well, they were really wanted that experience. So, and I found that it was really great. I learned how to do that. I learned how to get groups to work and everybody hold their weight and carry their weight and stuff. And I applied that to I applied that to multi-mentions. But it's a question of you're not assigned a topic, you're not assigned a point of view. You pick, I don't care, if you want gun control, if you want legalized marijuana, if you want paid student athletes. I heard a million presentations on those topics. Um, but the subject matter didn't matter, and your opinion didn't matter. Whatever you argued. But the question was whether you covered both sides and whether you had a logical argument and whether you had references and so forth. And it turned out to be really great. And I got really good at that. I got really good at just presiding over people doing stuff, and they would work in class and they'd work on their laptops and they would be finding stuff, and I would teach them how to footnote. I would help them along. Look at this, look at that. And it was all topics that I knew something about just because I listened to the news. And so I'd say, well, maybe look at this JSTOR database, or look at this, that, and the other. Go to the library and look up this and that. And I found that kind of, I had never had any kind of management experience, but then I found that was very applicable in multi-mentions, because it was like, all these different cartoonists wanted to do multi-mentions. I didn't force anybody to do any characters. I tried to suggest, here do, everybody wanted to do Megaton Man. They wanted to do team ups with Megaton Man, but I would suggest, well, maybe do the Slick, or maybe try the Phantom Jungle Girl or something. But then they were kind of just on their own, and I would just kind of like nudge them along. And I found that if I tried to intervene too much, it would just have negative repercussions. So if I just let people go but just kind of help them along when I was asked, and that's the only way you can do it in a classroom, is you got 25 students and there's just you, And you're not going to be the expert on everything. You just have to kind of help people along. So I learned some really good techniques from that.
What inspired Multi-Mentions? What made you think, oh, I want to work with a bunch of people? Because it feels like you were very solo up at like for the longest time.
Well, sorry for my bronchial problems here. I'll tell you that this was suggested to me. There was a fellow who did some podcasting, and he suggested he wanted to get into publishing, and he suggested an anthology, and he had never published anything. So I was like, kind of a soft no. And he went off and he did Big Bang with he took Chris Ecker and Gary Carlson's characters and did an anthology with Cosmic Lion Productions, and Jim Rugg did a cover, and various contributors. And so then I was in that. I had a pinup in that. So in early 2024, I said, well, okay, maybe we'll try this and have people interpret my characters. And but he wanted me to do the cover. See, I wasn't smart like Chris and Gary. They just said, here, take the Big Bang characters and do whatever the hell you want. Go nuts. We'll just sit back and enjoy our semi-retirement. This guy wanted me to do like a framing device and stuff. And then I said, well, hey, maybe I could do this and I could do that. And you're okay with that, right? Well, he was okay. He kept saying he was okay with it. But then 5 weeks later, he just ran off.
Wow.
And so then by that point, I had Joey Lee Corrales and a few other people that I was already collaborating with. I was already getting good results. And so like, well, who's gonna manage this? And I thought, well, I got nothing to do. So, and it was like teaching. Like I said, it was like, well, I'll just come up with a syllabus. And I actually did come up with a syllabus.
Really?
I actually wrote a syllabus. Like,
I like
here's
that.
what you do. Here's how you're going to be graded, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. But it was kind of a jokey thing. I had one guy who really went ballistic on that and got very angry about that. But he's got an aversion to. He had an aversion to school, and he dropped out. But anyway, so we didn't go that far as to actually issue a syllabus, but we had at least some rules. And then I got people to help me. I got Joe. I got Eli. Eli Schwab of Cosmic Lion Productions was the publisher of both Big Bang and Multi-Mentions. Amanda Stella Powers, Tom Powers, Steve Ray Plugel, Isaac Fisher. So I had kind of a kitchen cabinet kind of group of editorial advisors, just so that it wasn't me making my irrational demands and my aesthetic. Is this any good? Do we got anything? Is this anything? So and then it was just all word of mouth, and then it was the Coalition of the Willing. So people contacted us, and people did it for various reasons. I'm sure some people did it not because I'm the most charming person in the world, but because they like Megaton Man, or somebody else was in it that they liked. And the Bill Morrison drawing. Bill Morrison did a drawing of Megaton Man in the Simpsons style. And I actually double dipped. I used this in black and white and the complete Megaton Man, which is the other publication. So this is the Omni. I showed you this last week, and
It's giant.
I asked Bill, who went to the Center for Creative Studies a couple years ahead of me. I asked him to write an intro, and he did this beautiful drawing in full color. And I had, this is black and white, so I used it in both books. But I'm quite sure that Kerry Callan, who worked with Bill Morrison at Mad Magazine, I'm sure he wanted to be in part. For it became real, like oh, it's a real thing because I know this guy who's in it.
Right.
So Kerry Callan joined in, and just all different contributors who wanted to be a part of it. Amanda, I showed you her work last week. She did. This was the real turning point. Was when she turned in. This was just what I was looking for, because she has a very painterly style.
Yeah, look at that.
And she took the Cosmic Cue Ball, which is this minor little, Romana Clef kind of little gimmick from a deep cut in Megaton Man. She used that. And then Joey Lee Corrales, might have showed you his stuff. So he did a crossover, and we were going to do this initially as, the Frame Brothers did the back cover. These guys are
That's
really underrated.
Yeah.
So I tried to guide people, like you'd be good on this character. I had to scan a few things. I had to send them a few pages. Nobody was like, unfortunately the Omni did not exist yet. So here's the textbook. Here's your textbook, and you're gonna have a final exam. I couldn't do that because that wasn't out yet. But I had to do handouts, stapled handouts. I had to give them PDFs, and I had to give them, here's a JPEG of a page and so forth. So I had people doing Cosmic Cat and Tyranno Man and so forth. But I would try to guide them and suggest and do things. And of course, I did a lot of stuff. I did a thing with Chris Ecker, and I was kind of script doctor when I was asked. People wanted, like, how does your character talk? What would the character say in this scene? So I didn't have to do the heavy lifting in a lot of cases. I still stepped on a few people's toes, but nobody really complained. Everybody's really happy with it. It was a real thing, and it came out, so people are happy with it. But people were doing it for different reasons. For it looks good on their resume, or so they're happy with it. It's just a nice little thing and they could get these. They could get a deal on the book, so they got these at cost to sell at their tables this summer and so forth, this year and next year and so forth, last year.
So would you do another one like that?
That's a really good question. It was a lot of work. It was very time consuming. And the short answer is not yet. I'm gonna wait, see how I feel in the summer. We'll see if there's a market in the summer, for one thing. Yeah, it's a possibility. I haven't ruled it out. Certainly haven't ruled it out. But and I have, excuse me, I'd like to, when you go through an experience like that, there's all kinds of things that I learned that I wasn't sure it would work. I wasn't sure if I would cringe at different interpretations of my characters, because these are my characters. Most of my generation, Jim Valentino, Michael T. Gilbert, all all these people they had let loose their characters. Eric Larson had seen interpretations of his characters and published them and so forth. I had not done that. I had kept Megaton Man pretty closely held. There's some fan art out there. There's some deviant art interpretations and stuff. But I had not been secure enough or confident enough to let my characters go out there, and I wasn't sure how I would react. And then I started seeing started seeing the returns, and the way it unfolded, 2024 unfolded. We got started on this in January, February, and then Eddie Pisker passed away. That was like a blur for the next 4 months. And then all of a sudden, all these, like by August, all these things had been out there. People had been working on their 5-page stories and their 3-page stories and their 2-page stories, and they started coming in. And Kerry Callan started turning in pages. This incredible slick story that he did, and see if I can find this. So he does this, and I don't know if you're familiar with Kerry Callan's work, but he took all of my various characters from Bizarre Heroes, such as the Slick. The Black Bug is from X amount of comics. Wallman is from Megaton Man. He took all my Spider-Man avatars and teamed them all up. And so those pages came in, and just by instinct, what I realized I needed to do rather than crack the whip, because there are projects like this. There was a project called Giant Size 63 that took 4.5 years. And it threatened to like never materialize. It was one of those COVID projects. People start, and then they never turned anything in. And I didn't know what to do. Like, what if I have to get really ugly with people? But I realized that if I took everything I got, whether it was a rough sketch, whether it was a pencil, whether it was inked, whether it was colored, lettered, I took all those files, low res or whatever they were that people emailed me. I put them all into a PDF and I sent it out to everybody. And I said, here's where we're at. And it automatically created a kind of peer pressure. Like, oh, fuck, Kerry Callan's coloring it. And like Misi is like still on pencils, and like so like I didn't have to yell at anybody because they're like, oh, my ass is hanging out, I better get on this. So people are like turning things in. It was kind of self-reinforcing. It was a brilliant idea, but I just kind of came up on it accidentally. John Burkett did a Border World story, and this was in pencils for a long time. He finally started turning stuff in the fall. Christian J. Misi turned in his story. Trish Ellis, I would be remiss if I did not mention Canadian illustrator Trish Ellis. So I would do things like she just did this page. I didn't want this just to be a book of pinups.
Right. So
I made it so that I encourage. Oh, this is fucking brilliant. So here's my goodness. I'm already forgetting people's names. This is so embarrassing. Kurt Burdick. So Kurt Burdick, who does Death of Power, he wanted to do a 3-page story, and it basically where he's sitting at the drawing board thinking up ideas and he's crumpling paper up, and but he did this one panel of Megaton Man holding a school bus. I said, just do that. And he did this brilliant fucking cover. This is obviously Action Comics #1, and like here's the little kids are falling out of the back of the school bus, and the wheel is coming off here. It's just beautiful. And this is Amanda Stella Powers doing Harry Potter set. it just fed on itself, and the more things came in, especially after Labor Day of 24, and then Jim Rugg is asking me, is there still room? I ran into him in around Thanksgiving at a signing, and he says, "Is there still room?" And I said, "Oh, you talked to me 20 minutes ago." I said, "Sure." So he does his where are we at here? You might be able to find it. Here we go. So this is what Jim Rugg did. He does that's the burn hugger.
That's great. That's like one of Jim's like ink pen drawings, right?
Oh yeah, and this is all
crazy.
ballpoint.
It's
It's all
crazy.
ballpoint
Yeah,
pen.
it's crazy.
Awesome. And how did you decide on that format? That hardcover, like 9x12, or how?
Catherine, what's that?
How did you decide on that format? The it looks like 9x12.
That was kind of inherited from Big Bang, the treasury size. So this is literally, I mean, they're
beautiful.
Here they are side by side. So this is more like 8.5 by 11. This is what is considered modern treasury size. So this is a lot taller. It's in the aspect of a comic book. And I'm leaving out so many names. I'll tell you the other thing that helped encourage people to turn in their work. And I started this very early. I just decided I became the designer of the book by default because I was throwing everything into a InDesign and turning it into a PDF, and I would just upgrade it as I got inks and coloring and so forth. But the other thing that I did is that I started doing the bios in the back. And so people are like, "Oh, oh, look, there's Alan Davis, and there's Chris Ecker, and there's the Frame Brothers, and there's Matt Fizel, and there's like, oh, I'm going to be with these people. I better get my work in." So it became a joy as far as that was concerned. People just turned in their stuff, and I had people. I had my editorial board to run ideas by. Is this any good, or what? How's? I had proofreaders and so forth. So it was a wonderful collaborative experience. And so to do another one, it would just be interesting to do another one just to see if I've learned those lessons. But that I really wish we had a budget. I really wish there was, could pay these people some money next time, and really, I really want to think about how I want to approach it. Because the other way of doing it would be more like a Harvey Kurtzman, where you just write all the stories and then you get illustrators to do their thing. But then you have kind of more control over the product from a layout standpoint and so forth. I don't know if I want to do that. If I wanted to, because this was like, some people did their interpretations of my characters. Other people did team ups of, their IP. So you had we did a wonderful. We got permission from, I don't know if you know who Chris Yambar is.
Yeah, rest in peace, Chris.
Chris Yambar. I got permission from Maureen, his widow, and we got George Broderick Jr. to do. And this is kind of my little thumbnail layout, but George just went to town, and he had collaborated with Chris. So he did. I said, "Here, do something with the Megaton mice." I haven't done anything with those characters, so he put Mr. Beat with a bunch of other Chris Yambar characters and just did a beautiful job. So we did a lot of team ups and Joe Miller did a 3D Megaton Man.
Wow.
Now, it looks like a plastic doll, but he actually did all this 3D, and he got bogged down. He was like, well, I want to do a whole digital city. I want to do Megatropolis. I want to do the Megatropolis Quartet headquarters and the Manhattan Project offices, and I want to do all these buildings. And he was like, he wanted to do a Pixar animated thing. I said, no, just give me. He was taking like way too long, and I said, well, look, just you've already done the character. Just generate a bunch of different poses, and I'll just throw in photos in the background, and that's how that came together. But he did a wonderful job. Gosh, so many people. This is Kate Workman did this little doll. It's actually about like 18 inches tall. So
Wow.
she did this. She did this Yarn Man chibi, and this is Amanda and Tom's dog, Mocha. So Amanda Stella Powers got Kate to do this doll. She also does like Kate Workman, who's the daughter of John Workman, used to be the art director of Heavy Metal. He did a pinup too. She does like Doctor Who dolls and different things, and that came out beautifully too. So every one of them, I'm very proud of every single contribution.
How can people get that book?
Can't get any more. This is hundreds of dollars now. You can go to the Cosmic Lion Productions website, link down below, but I don't have the link right on hand. I can look that up for you. But Eli Schwab, Cosmic Lion Productions, they do Ghost Agents, they do Big Bang, they did Giant Size 63, which is the
I can fetch that URL, but we have some questions from folks.
Kind of the counterpart of this. Okay.
All right. Yeah, let's do it. We're kind of running out of road here. That's what we do here.
Oh my gosh, we are.
So we're going to go super lightning round. So Steve, give Don some questions.
All right, we got a few questions here. Thank you everybody. We're going to start off with Jeff Yoon on the YouTubes. Don, how did Splitting Image come about? And if it's not too touchy a subject, what's Rob Liefeld's beef with you? Oh boy.
I have no beef with anybody. I love everybody.
Yeah, the world of love.
Well, it's kumbaya. Gary Groth wanted me to do an image satire because he had a beef with Image Comics. Everybody had. You have to remember, everybody had it. Like, what are these Marvel guys doing? Like Peter David had a problem with Image Comics. But then Image very wisely hired everybody. And so suddenly all these, mainstream artists like Jerry Ordway and everybody, like they all had their Image projects. And that really kind of quieted the crowd, very shrewd, very shrewd. So I knew Larry Martyr, Tales of the Bean World. He was working at Moondogs in Chicago. There was a kind of a central headquarters. There was a chain of stores called Moondogs Pop Culture. Gary Colabano, Chris Ecker worked there. Big Bang Comics, and so I let it be known that Gary had approached me, but I said I replied to Gary and I said I'm not offended by these Image guys. They just want to keep their toy rights. That's perfectly fine with me. I don't have a real beef. Dennis Kitchen used to have he wanted me to attack the industry and attack his enemies and stuff. And it's like, no, I'm just going to do Tyranno Man. I'm not a hired gun. But so and Larry knew Jim Valentino, and Jim Valentino was studio mates with Rob Liefeld. And apparently Larry had talked to Jim, and then it came back to me, and Larry called me up and said, hey, these guys want you to do a parody of Image Comics for for Image Comics. It'd be like Not Brand X, like Marvel parroting themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of money. And they're going to call you and like get in the right frame of mind. And I'm really glad he did that, because otherwise I would be like, what? I'm not good on cold calls. So I said, oh, sure. And so then next thing I know, because they called me up together, Rob Liefeld and Jim Valentino, they called me up and they said, we want you to do this thing. And I'm like, oh, if it had been a cold call, it would have been like, I don't know, do I have time? Do I want to do this? That kind of thing. So that's how that happened. And then the Image tent, Larry, you've heard of the Image tent. That was Chicago Comic-Con. That was all a Moondogs thing. That was Larry and Chris Ecker, and Bevan Brown was the security person and so forth. And so and then I brought 5 pages of Splitting Image to Chicago that year. And I went to the Image tent. They want to see you out in the Image tent. We were sitting in Artist Alley. There was nobody in Artist Alley. All the fans were out in the parking lot at the Image tent. So I go out to the Image tent, and then Eric Larson is like, hey, we should do a team up. Savage Dragon and Megaton Man. And this is typical. I revert back to like, well, why don't you let me do some new cool character? You're all doing new characters. Why don't you let me do some new thing? I go back to the hotel and I sleep overnight, and then I wake up in the morning. I'm like, are you crazy? And I run out to the Image and team up. And that's how that happened. So otherwise I could have, it could have almost not happened. Is the short story.
That's amazing. Amazing. Jeff, thank you for that question. We got a few here from MVP. Oh, what's that?
One more, couple more questions.
Joe asks, question, of the 3 books you released this past year, 3 books, the Don Simpson trilogy, which book project did you feel you learned the most about? And if so, what were the challenges?
Well, really only 2. The third one is coming in from China. The third one is The Lost Art of Don Simpson, which was a Kickstarter. And talk about going to the well once too often. I was really worried that it wouldn't work, but it did. So that's the third project. But I think Multimensions. I mean, the Complete Megaton Man is great to have, and we did a great job. It's certainly, you can kill flies with it. And, but it's like, it's all my stuff and it's all old stuff. And it's great that I scanned it and I put a lot of work into it, cleaning it up. And the designers did a great job. But I think Multimensions was the more engrossing learning experience.
That's great. We've got a follow-up from Joe as well. What did you learn the most about the crowdfunding process, which you feel is worthy of sharing?
I don't know. I'm gonna try another one in the spring and see if I have learned what I think I've learned. It's I think I've learned gratitude. You really can see now the close dependency. I'm on a first name basis with most of my fans. It used to be a mass market. You know this, Mike, and all you guys know this. It's like it's a dwindling iceberg. But so I've learned that you're interacting with a community and that kind of thing. And again, kumbaya. I'm not used to that. It doesn't come naturally to me. I'm thinking like I'm an artist and I'm in an ivory tower and that kind of thing. But I think I've learned gratitude and dependency. And you're dependent on art supplies. You need other people to have an art supply industry, other people that use these things, and if it's just me, nobody's going to be making pens and brushes and Bristol board just for me. So I need other people. There's an economy out there. There's a social dimension to what we're doing. So we're dependent upon networks of people and so forth. So I think I've learned to get philosophical. I think that's the most profound lesson that I've really had ground into me.
I love that. That's fantastic. Thank you for the question, Joe. Tim Fielder from Facebook. Hey, Don. Thanks so much for interfacing last week. One quick question about Border Worlds. What was your motivation behind doing a hard sci-fi space opera, as it seemed it was so different from your other work?
Well, I talk about this in my blogs and in certain afterwards and things. I forget which one is coming up, but Border Worlds was actually from junior high school. Even earlier than that, it had a long trajectory to it. Bizarre Heroes was also a lot of those characters were from junior high school. So I wanted to be a kind of a serious heavy metal artist before I became Megaton Man, caricatural humor, slapstick satire. So I think, I mean, it was always just an aspiration to do. I was inspired by Ridley Scott and Ralph McQuarrie, and those kind of movies were coming out in the 70s. Star Wars, Close Encounters, John Dykstra, and Alien. The Dune, just the production design of those and the aura of hard science fiction. I didn't read a lot. I've read Asimov and Heinlein much later, but I was visually interested in those imaginary worlds, not so much the aliens and creatures, more the hardware. And I kind of correlated that. Growing up in Detroit, rusty cars and post-industrial factories and that kind of thing, I wanted that milieu in Border Worlds. And so it's basically a space station, kind of a gritty space station that's kind of rusty and run down, and people work in their spacesuits, and it's not glamorous. It's not Star Trek. It wasn't mystical, the Force and all that stuff. It was much more
River Rouge in space.
The Ford assembly line.
Yeah, exactly.
F-150 assembly line in space.
Yeah.
Or the Packard plant, really.
Oh yeah.
The dilapidated Packard plant in Detroit, which they're still cleaning up.
I have a ton of pictures. I went down and took pictures there with my dad about 15 years ago.
We have one last question, and we're going to get it under the wire. Again, Joe, thank you again. Could you tell us about your various other artistic expressions, such as your musical endeavors? I noticed several guitars behind you, he said knowingly.
Nice to hear from Joe. Finally. Third question. That was what I picked up during the pandemic. This is a baritone guitar, and it's actually, I don't know if you can hear anything.
Yeah.
But I played the clarinet and saxophone back in elementary school and high school and stuff. B flat instruments. I wanted to. There was a church group, my mother's church. Excuse me, my mother's church. I was taking my mom to church, and there was a group of. They invited me. They said, "Oh, you play an instrument?" Well, so I got a clarinet, and I started playing. But if you know anything about that, you can't. I'm not good at transposing to B flat. So I wanted a C instrument. I got a flute, but then I thought, oh, I should get a guitar, and the guitars are affordable. And now I've got too many guitars, but I'm not. I don't have a contract with Blue Note Records yet. Unfortunately, they haven't taken my audio tapes seriously. But I just do scales. I just like make sounds, and I like learning. So it's kind of a hobby at this point. So
You did it.
Thank you. We did it. Thank you,
all
guys.
right, man.
Pencils down.
We'll try to get an interesting guest for a change next week. It's really I've never done a 2-part podcast. I'm very gratified.
Well,
Especially glad to be able to talk about multi-dimensions. All those people, 50 people. We had people in Iran. We had people in South America. We had people in the United Kingdom. Alan Davis. We had all kind of people. So I'm particularly happy to talk about that. And I'll see you guys on the road. Hopefully, I'll run into you at a convention or see you online.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Cosmic Line Productions. You can order multi-dimensions from Eli. There's a paperback, and there is I think he still has some hardcovers. This is the paperback. So beautiful. And there will be 50 people at conventions who also they'll have copies at their tables. So if you run into those folks, Frame Brothers have copies and so forth. So
you can Johnny Appleseed that all over the con floor. I love it.
That's the way to distribute. That might be the reason to do another one, is just because that's your distribution network. You get collaborators out there and they spread the word.
Spread the word. Well, Don, you have been a fantastic guest. You were so fantastic. We looked at you twice in a row. I love it.
Thank you guys.
We'll love to have you back on in the near future. You have a lot of stuff going on, and we love it. We love to celebrate the spirit of independence, and also just owning your own shit. I think is not said enough. So thank you for all that you do, and for giving our audience and your audience the time the last 2 weeks. Thank you so much. Mike, you have any last words, and we'll get out of here.
I was just saying how much it was fun to connect, and it's also sort of funny how much we have in common that I wasn't aware of. So that's also a really interesting thing, because we're almost the same age, grew up almost in the same area, more or less, and I think that's really cool.
Only I would never have talked to a DC guy back then. those mainstream guys. That's funny because I go to conventions now, and I'm hanging out with Walt Simonson, and and not to drop names, but I mean, like, people that, like, those were the Marvel guys, and this, that, and the other, and it's like, now you all get together, and Ron Friends. I had a good conversation with Ron Friends, and people that were kind of like, oh, they're everything used to be really tribal, like different compartments and different companies, and there were the alternative people, and there were the mainstream people, and there's but now everybody's like one big happy family. So I would be remiss if I did not point that out.
Good job. Good
kumbaya. All right, guys, stay safe.
Thank you.
Avoid ice in every manifestation, and talk to you guys later. Thanks.
All right. See you,
Thanks,
Don.
Steve.
Night.
Megaton hands.
Oh yeah, there you go. Megaton.
Megaton hands. Woo hands.
I love it. All right, guys. Thanks so much. We're going to see you next week. We have no idea what we're doing, but you'll be the first to know. Nice.
Yep.
He's throwing up gang signs. We got to get out of here. All right, guys. All right, we'll see you next. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.